Honestly, I think it's very interesting that you seem to care way more about this stuff than I do. And I'm the black one.
Friends, welcome to my corner of the internet. I got cookies, oat milk, and hot takes about storytelling you might enjoy. It's February, and that means it's Black History Month. In honor of the occasion, I want to present to you with my favorite quote from Orange is the New Black.
I realize I am among the fairest of our species, but that is some white people bullshit.
I know.
That's exactly why we're here. White people tend to bull a lot of shit, and it needs to be addressed. And to do so, I'm joined by a very special guest today.
Hi guys, my name's Cara. I love watching mostly animated shows and reading books, and I love to draw and animate. As a mixed-race Brazilian-Austrian who also happens to be queer, representation in the media is an important topic for me.
For me too. I'm as white as they come, but since I'm a writer and a content creator, I do want to do a good job. On the other hand, I'm bisexual, so bad representation bothers me on a personal level too.
We're mainly gonna be talking about black and queer representation today, since it's Black History Month, and in the UK, it's LGBTQ+ History Month. Also, those are the identities we can talk about from experience.
The question we're going to talk about today is, should majority writers write minority characters? That means, should white creators create black characters? Straight creators create queer characters?
Quick mandatory disclaimer at this point. Obviously, our opinions are not gonna be the gospel truth. But by openly talking about these subjects, we might encourage you to form your own opinion.
But before we jump into the video, let's give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Squarespace. Oh wait, we don't have a sponsor, because I literally have 3 subscribers.
F dude.
To start out, maybe we should take a look at why it matters which writers write which characters. I'd like to demonstrate this with the dramedy show Orange is the New Black. This is one of my favorite shows ever because it's a show about women, especially queer women. It's set in a women's prison in the state of New York, and because of that, the cast is very diverse. You have your black populations, you have the Latinas, the white women, etc. You even have a trans woman played by a real-life trans woman, which is awesome and should happen way more on TV. This show has been praised a lot for its broad representation of different groups of women, but there's also been criticism, mainly because of its undiverse writers' room. In a very insightful article by Carol Collymore, which I'll link to in the description, the author references that the show has 16 credited writers, 14 of which are white, 1 is Asian American, and 1 is Latinx. None of them are black. And keeping that knowledge in mind, the show becomes a little bit uncomfortable to me. Orange is the New Black tells the story of criminals, but instead of categorically condemning them or romanticizing their lives, it shows the good, the bad, and the ugly of these women. It's very dramatized, obviously, but the show gives up such realistic vibes that I sometimes forgot that I was watching a show. And this is quite an accomplishment, since the show can get very absurd, plot-wise sometimes.
What's going on?
There's $1,000 inside a chicken somewhere. Everyone's looking for it.
What?
Orange is the New Black talks about police brutality, tribalism and racism in prison, homophobia, sexual abuse, and a load of other heavy topics. There's a subplot in one season where the white protagonist accidentally forms a white nationalist movement with real Nazis in it. So many racial slurs I had never heard before are being used in the show. In a show with black writers, these instances of racism could reflect the black experience in prison. But without black writers, isn't it just racism put on display for the amusal of the audience?
Honestly, I think it's very interesting that you seem to care way more about this stuff than I do. And I'm the black one. And I don't even know why. Like, have I been taught that I'm not allowed to get mad at stuff like that? Are my expectations just that low? Or do I really not care? I think white people might be a little quick to get offended on our behalf.
Yeah, I think that's one aspect of it. Like, we don't want to do a racism. We want to be good. So we try too hard to be anti-racists. If I compare my reaction to racism to my reaction to misogyny or homophobia, it's definitely more extreme. Because I know what it's like to be a woman and a queer person. I don't need the media to tell me about those experiences. So when I see something that is about women or queer people by male or straight writers, I might get annoyed when it's inaccurate, but I don't get uncomfortable with my enjoyment of the show. But with Orange is the New Black, it's different. When I watch a show that handles anti-black racism in a non-politically correct way, and it's written by black people, I can watch that show with the knowledge that I'm watching a genuine account of the experience of racism. If it's written by white people, however, I feel like it's catering to me, the white audience,
playing into my underlying racist thoughts and beliefs that I inevitably have from being raised in a racist society, no matter how hard I try to educate myself or work against those prejudices. So I would have preferred if they hired black writers.
So that means you don't believe in death of the author?
That's a tricky one. Usually I do, actually. I believe that communication through the media is a two-sided coin. You have the author's intent, and you have the audience's takeaway. If you take one away, you have nothing of worth anymore. I think the audience's individual interpretations of a piece of media add so much to storytelling. That's why fanfictions or fan theories are so entertaining. But at the same time, knowing what kind of person wrote a book or created a show can tell you what kind of ideological framework a piece of media was written in, and it can tell you about the degree of realism of the experiences it depicts, at least when it comes to experiences that are tied to a personal identity. So I think death of the author applies when talking about the meaning or interpretation of a creation, but not when it comes to representation.
Fair. Being black doesn't mean that you can write about any black experience though. Sure, if you have a black woman who has known poverty and crime to write about poverty and crime, then you'll probably have an accurate representation. But me? I grew up in suburban Switzerland, in a nice house with good education. Honestly, I feel like I've lived a very white life. I got many chances others never got.
I get what you mean, but I think when talking about these sorts of things we mix up race and class too often. I come from a similar socioeconomic background as you, but I have never and will never experience racism. And that's one aspect where a writer of color will always have a more realistic story to tell.
That is true. Race can be a huge defining factor in your life and experience, but it's never the only one. So by judging someone's race alone, you can't say whether they do the characters they write justice or not. Writing fiction of any kind means imagining something that doesn't exist, creating a person that isn't alive, and living an imaginary experience that isn't yours. If all we ever were allowed to write about was our own experience, then all blockbusters would be about people typing away at their desks, maybe using the bathroom once or twice.
Michael Bay could probably find a way to make the toilet explode in the movie like that.
Exactly. But then again, he would have to imagine something that never happened to him. Interesting stories come from making stuff up. They say the best storytelling comes straight from the heart. But that doesn't mean all stories have to be autobiographies. We as writers and creators, and as humans in general, have the power to empathize with other people. We can imagine what it's like to fit into shoes that aren't our size. So even if we're not black, we can understand what it's like to be mocked, outcast, and oppressed. Even if we're not queer, we can understand the pain of having to hide our true selves, or feeling shame for not being allowed to be prideful in our love. That's the beauty of story, empathizing with different experiences, and to enjoy doing so. We do not actively try to understand, but we are led to an emotional connection with the characters through great storytelling. The important thing is not who writes a narrative, but whether or not the writer gets it right.
I think that's what it all boils down to, getting it right. You gotta research. With everything you write that isn't about your own experience. Writing a crime novel, better research police work. Writing a queer coming out story, you better talk to multiple queer people and hear their stories. You need to know your shit. You need to make sure it's convincing. Otherwise, learn to live with the consequences of having an audience that wasn't convinced. That means getting criticized for bad representation. And you shouldn't get mad at people for criticizing you either. If people of color and queer people didn't appreciate your portrayal of a character of their identity group, maybe learn from their points and do better next time.
At the same time, you need to know that whatever you do, you won't ever be able to please everyone. It's just important to keep the impact of your work in mind, knowing what good or bad representation in the media can mean for viewers, and to strive to portray the characters you depict in a genuinely respectful way. At the same time, we should encourage minority writers to create and tell stories that are relevant to them and give them the platform to do so. This is especially true if it's a story about oppression.
Yes, I do think there's a difference between writing a story that features the experience of oppression or an experience unique to a certain identity group as its main plot, as opposed to it being a smaller part of the narrative. Like, if a movie is about struggling with racism or homophobia, then I sure as hell hope one of the creators has a personal experience with that. Because having the story of your struggle told by the members of the group who causes your struggle, that hurts, man. However, if it's a story about human problems that have nothing to do with discrimination, I honestly don't care who wrote it, even if it features minority characters, as long as, say it with us,
It was done well.
I could talk about TV shows and books and movies that do representation well for hours, but since I got Cara on the show today, she's gonna talk about her favorite examples found in animated shows.
There are many animated shows with good representation out there, but today I want to talk about these three: Kipo and the Age of Wonder Beasts, Voltron, Legendary Defenders, and Steven Universe. Kipo and the Age of Wonder Beasts is about a dystopian future where people have to hide in underground bunkers because the surface is filled with monsters and dangerous animals, and about Kipo's journey back to her family after her bunker was destroyed by a huge monkey. This show features three main characters who are all people of color. This was a nice change to see. Often the black character is just the best friend of the protagonist or some side character who's important in some episode. But seeing three non-white protagonists made me feel like the creators of this show really cared about representation instead of just needing a black character. This show also has great queer representation. One of the main characters is gay, and the way he comes out to his friends and the audience is so natural and realistic that it feels like someone with experience wrote that scene.
I think I like you.
Oh.
You don't feel the same.
Oh, no, I like you too. Really, really like you. You're all kinds of awesome, but you should know something.
You like me as a friend.
Yes, because I'm gay.
Oh. Oh, I totally misread your signals. Is it okay if I curl up into a ball right now?
The next show I want to mention is Voltron Legendary Defenders. It's about a group of teens finding mysterious lion-shaped machines and their journey through space. One of the main characters is Lance McLean. He's Cuban, funny, and the ranger of the group. I feel like this character was very well written. With most characters of color, I feel like they're just black because the creators wanted a black character. It feels like it doesn't matter that they're black and could easily be white instead, which is also good. If we want healthy black representation, we can't treat black characters more or less special than white characters. Equality and stuff, you know? But with Lance, it's different. His nationality is so important to his character that making him white would make zero sense. The way he acts, thinks, and the things he cares about are so relatable to me that he feels like a real person. Lance also constantly doubts his place in the group and never really feels like he fits in. And as a mixed race person, this hit very close to home. That feeling of not fitting in is also a big theme in Steven Universe. The protagonist Steven is half human, half magical gem being. He's not magical enough to be considered a gem, but he will never be a regular human. He constantly feels like he doesn't belong anywhere and that he can't talk to anyone about his feelings because there's no one like him. As a mixed race person, I could relate with this feeling of not fitting in and having to create your own identity.
Look, humans and gems, it's still some pretty new territory. You're gonna have to work it out together. And Connie, if you ever need to talk to another human being about this, you can always talk to me. Human beings?
Human beings.
Human beings.
These shows all deal with different aspects of being black or mixed race, and they're also just entertaining to watch.
Cara, thank you so much for these cool recommendations and for being on the show today. And also for kind of designing the whole graphic design that was going on in this video.
Thanks for having me!
And to you, dear friends, thanks for watching, and I hope I see you next time.